Ihnen ein paar kurze einleitende Worte zum Museum geben. Wer noch nicht hier war, sich kennt. Wir sind ja ein integriertes Forschungsmuseum der Leibniz-Gemeinschaft. Das heißt, wir haben hier als Forschungsgrundlage immense Sammlungen von ungefähr 30 Millionen, 35 Millionen Objekten. Und vielleicht haben Sie es auch aus der Presse entnommen, wir haben ja in den letzten Jahren sind sehr erfolgreich gewesen, vor allem im letzten Jahr, seit der wahrscheinlich 3/4 Million Besucher hier begrüßen können. Und deswegen freue ich mich auch so, dass die Experten hier sind und dass Sie hier sind als Medienvertreter, denn ich hoffe mal, dass Sie jetzt alles dafür tun werden, dass unser schönes Museum hier weiter stehen bleibt und sich die Leute die Dinosaurier auch weiterhin angucken können, denn wie ich gehört habe, geht es darum, wie kann man Kometen ablenken, Asteroiden, dass sie hier nicht auf die Erde stürzen und ich wollte ja auch noch ein paar Jahre hier arbeiten im Museum und so gesehen hoffe ich, dass das jetzt hier also wirklich das wird, dass das Projekt durchkommt und übergebe an den Moderator.
Okay.
Vielen Dank. Ich mache hier hoch, weil ich so klein bin, damit Sie mich auch sehen können. Willkommen im Museum. Vielen Dank an das Museum. Vielen Dank an Kai Winnemann für die Organisation.
Greg Richters introduces the event. Thanks the museum for hosting this. Welcome to everybody on the live stream.
Ich bin der Mitbegründer von dem Asteroid Day, dem Asteroidentag, quasi einem Tag am 30. Juni.
Greg is one of the founders of the Asteroid Day, taking place every year on the 30th of June. Founded, I think, 2 years ago.
Asteroiden sind ja immer so negativ, oftmals in der Presse, sondern sind eigentlich wunderschön und wahnsinnig faszinierend.
Together with the so-called small body scientist, Dr. Kai, Dr. Patrick Michel, Gisela Pöskers and Holger Sierks.
Und wir machen das jetzt so, ich werde einfach ein paar Fragen stellen an die
He will address some questions to all the experts being here, and they will answer them. And in the end, there might be an open question and answers round.
Das war eines der Gründe, auch warum wir jetzt heute hier sind. Seit dem Oktober haben wir jetzt den Meilenstein 15.000 bekannten.
Just recently in October, it was discovered that we know 15,000 asteroids out of a million, which are bigger than 1 kilometer in diameter.
Außerdem Patrick Michel, der leider kein Deutsch spricht, aber sehr gutes Französisch, wird am Ende einen offenen Brief vorlesen, den über 100 Asteroidenforscher,
Patrick Michel from Observatoire de la Cote D'Azur will read a letter signed by a lot of scientists at the end of this press event. All of the material will be available in the press kit, available to the people here and also online. So, Alan Harris from DLR is one of the speakers here. Gisela Pöskes from Museum. Kai Winnemann. Stefan Ulametz from DLR. Holger Sierks.
Jürgen Blum vom TU Braunschweig.
Jürgen Blum.
Cornelius Schalinski, der die Industriekonsortium und auch OHB repräsentiert.
Cornelius Schalinski from Industry.
Observatorium aus Nizza.
And Patrick Michel.
So. Und die erste Frage, die wir heute haben,
First question to Alan Harris.
Und zwar, was sind eigentlich erdnahe Asteroiden oder auch sogenannte NEOs?
What do we call near-Earth objects, or NEOs?
Es ist so, dass im Asteroidenhauptgürtel zwischen den Umlaufbahnen von Mars und Jupiter gibt es so einen Speicher von Millionen von Asteroiden.
There's a main belt of asteroids between Mars and Jupiter, and there are millions of them, and when they collide, they might be destroyed and might get onto an orbit towards Earth, for example.
Das bedeutet, einige können die Erdbahn kreuzen auf diesem Weg, auf diesen abgelenkten Umlaufbahnen. Und natürlich, wenn ein Asteroid die Umlaufbahn eines Planeten kreuzt.
And if this happens so that an asteroid crosses the orbit of a planet like Earth, that it's just a matter of time until a collision will take place. And a lot of the surface of Earth and other planets is formed by asteroids impacting.
Die ganz großen Objekte sind nicht
Objects larger than 1 kilometer are well known, are characterized,
und
and
das
we
in den
know
nächsten 100 bis 200 Jahren
that they will
so ein
not
großes Objekt die Erde nicht berühren kann.
collide with the
Aber die
Earth
kleineren
within the next
Objekte sind das
1 or
Problem. Es
200
gibt
years,
viel
but
mehr
the smaller
kleine
ones
Objekte als große Objekte.
are
Wir
much
reden von
more of
zum
them,
Beispiel 10 Meter bis ein paar
objects
100 Meter
larger than
Durchmesser.
10
Und
meters,
das sind Objekte, die relativ häufig die Erde treffen können. Wir
are
sahen
quite a lot,
2013
millions of them,
ein Feuerknall,
and
das
it's just a
über
matter of years that the
Russland
next one might hit the Earth.
Durchmesser
Remember
20
the
Meter,
Chelyabinsk
hat
impact
tausende von Gebäuden
2013.
eine
It was an object of around 20 meters in diameter, and it destroyed thousands of, or damaged thousands of buildings, injured a lot of people,
kommt es zu solchen Kollisionen.
and this
Bei
happens
Objekten von
all the
50
time.
Meter bis 100 Meter, so in dem Bereich, würden wir wahrscheinlich, wenn
If the object would be in the size of 50 to 100 meters,
so glücklicherweise nicht so häufig, aber in zeitlicher, also jede paar tausend Jahre,
which might happen every
wahrscheinlich mit einem etwas
centuries or 1,000
wir
years,
würden das dann ablenken müssen.
and for those larger objects it's mandatory to deflect it somehow from its collision with
Was
Earth.
wir über diese Objekte, wir kennen ungefähr die Anzahl von Objekten in verschiedenen Größenklassen. Was wir nicht sehr gut kennen, sind die physikalischen Eigenschaften. Das
We
heißt,
know the approximate number of objects in the different size classes, but we know almost nothing about their constitution, the materials they're made of, their characteristics.
Parameter, diese physikalischen
And to prepare for a deflection of an asteroid like that, we need to understand much more about their constitution. That's what can be achieved by this mission AIDA.
Vielen Dank. Gisela, was sind
Question to Gisela.
die bekannten Einschlagskrater?
So which impact craters do we know on Earth? We know about 190 of them.
Größe und das Alter der Krater ist immens von der Varietät. Also die jüngsten Krater, wenn wir jetzt mal an Karl
The craters are of different age. Smaller ones are known, just being created recently in the past years or decades. Others are much bigger, up to 200 kilometers, which were created in the past few centuries. And also looking further back, the big craters, or the big impacts, which caused the death of the dinosaurs.
Was uns jetzt im Rieskratermuseum sehr beschäftigt. Wir haben ein sehr gutes Doppelkratersystem mit dem Rieskrater und dem Steinheimer Becken, beide relativ jung mit 15 Millionen Jahren. Also auch das
There are two craters also in Germany with a dimension of, or with an age of about 15 million years.
Asteroiden zu besuchen. Und ich glaube, die Kollegen hatten da ja auch herausgefunden, dass es viel mehr Doppelasteroiden gibt, als man gemeinhin vorher angenommen hat.
And AIDA is aiming at a double asteroid, which were thought to be quite few of them, but recent researchers came to the conclusion that there are much more of those, that it might be up to 15% of the asteroids might be binary asteroids, and we should make use of this chance to investigate this one.
Was können wir eigentlich tun, sollte ein Asteroid auf dem Kollisionskurs mit der Erde sein?
So question to Kai Wünnemann, what should we do if an asteroid is on its way to Earth with the risk of a collision, presenting a piece of rock?
Das ist ein Stück von einem Asteroiden, den wir hier auch im Museum, viele davon haben. Und so ähnlich könnte vielleicht der Körper aussehen, insbesondere der jetzt in der Mission besucht werden soll. Und um so ein Ereignis abzuwehren, wäre die Möglichkeit, einen sogenannten kinetischen Impaktor.
To mitigate the risk of a collision, one option would be a so-called kinetic impactor, shooting a big projectile to the asteroid and deflecting it by modifying its orbit. It's not trivial, it's not easy, it's not playing billiards.
Wir versuchen, ein Objekt in den Weg zu stellen. Die Geschwindigkeiten dabei sind so 6, 7 bis 10 Kilometer pro Sekunde.
The relative speed of this kind of impact is in the order of 6 to 10 kilometers per second. And the effect of this, result of this, is strongly depending on the properties, the characteristics of the object to be hit.
Ist zum Beispiel, was angenommen wird, viele Asteroiden sind wahrscheinlich sehr porös, dann ist das, als würde man in einen Schwamm reinschießen.
So if it's a very porous material, it would be like shooting into a swamp, so damping most of the energy, while others might have other properties. So that's really important, very important to prove with a real asteroid what is its characteristics are and how does this impact result in a modification of the orbit of the asteroid. And we need to understand the characteristics, the constitution.
Stefan, kannst du uns bitte genaueres über die ADA-Mission erzählen?
So question to Stefan Ulamek to explain a bit on the ADA mission. It's a combined mission consisting of the so-called impactor called DART, developed and built by NASA. Second part, the European spacecraft AIM. AIM shall arrive at the asteroid before the impact of DART, doing a first characterization of the asteroid, trying to not just to understand the constitution of the asteroid, but also the origin and the nature of these binary asteroids. Later on it will monitor the impact of the DART spacecraft characterize the ejector which will be thrown out of the asteroid by the impact, will perform the same measures as have been done before the impact, so compare them to the measurements afterwards, and also measure the orbital parameters of the smaller body, the so-called Diddy moon, around the main body before and after. And by this evaluate the efficiency of this impact, and also trying to gather as much as possible information about the constitution of the asteroid, also to pave the way for potential asteroid mining, to understand what the materials in there are and if it's useful to make use of them. So, question to Jürgen Blum: why did NASA and ESA select Didymos as a target for this mission? The reason is that Didymos is the only known binary asteroid which will get comparable close to Earth within the next years or decades, so allowing for a short transfer time to the asteroid of just 1.5 years, but also allowing for observations not only in situ by AIM, but also allowing to observe the impact with ground-based instruments like radars and optical telescopes, and last but not least, also to enable a calibration of Earth-based observations with an in-situ measurement, so that also other measurements done with ground-based systems can be calibrated, and the results from them can be much better understood. And this occurs within the next years, only in 2022, which also leads to a reduced or limited cost for the mission due to short development time, launch in 4 years from today, in 2020, and also having a comparable short mission duration, which also reduces the operations cost for the mission. And after this 1.5 year of transfer, about half a year of observations in situ will take place, and after this the mission will be completed. and also the D Moon, with its diameter of about 180 meter, is exactly in the range of asteroids which might get very dangerous for Earth in the case of a collision and are in a size which by a kinetic impactor could be deflected.
Cornelius, was sind denn die einzelnen Ziele dieser Mission?
So next question to Cornelius from OHB. What are the goals of this mission?
Wir im Kreise der Wissenschaftler sitzen dürfen, um Ihnen zu sagen, dass unsere Ingenieure aller beteiligten Firmen in Europa wirklich darauf brennen, diese Mission, die ja schon 2020 starten soll, zu implementieren.
So industry led by OHB, but together with an international consortium from multiple countries from Europe, are really keen on implementing this mission, developing the technology for this, and also enabling future missions. Also pointing out this opportunity to demonstrate asteroid deflection. And it's also a unique opportunity to combine a technology demonstration mission with two other goals, being some science return, gaining scientific knowledge about the asteroids, and also proving this aspect of the asteroid deflection. On top of the AIM spacecraft, there will be so-called CubeSats on board, about the dimension of 30 times 10 times 10 centimeters, which will support also the measurements to be made there. For example, they could observe the impact of the DART spacecraft from much closer distance than the main spacecraft. So we hope that AIM, together with the CubeSats, will also a precursor for other future missions of a similar style. So Holger Sierks talking, stating that we are prepared to complete this mission, also based on knowledge gained by the Rosetta mission. We're sitting here below a model of the Rosetta spacecraft. So Rosetta just visit the comet Chury, but also on its way to the comet visited some asteroids and also gathered some knowledge there by remote sensing. And the AIM mission also will not just provide an impression of the surface of these asteroids, but also will get a knowledge about the interior of the asteroid by radars, which will go through the material, which will investigate the upper layers of the asteroid, and the second one will also go through the whole asteroid and provide knowledge about the interior constitution of the asteroid. Coming back to the point that asteroid deflection will only work if we know how the asteroids are built, what the material is, what the porosity is, to understand how this kinetic impact is, or the momentum of the kinetic impact is transferred to the asteroid. So again, Cornelis Schilinski from OHB. It's not just OHB in Bremen working on this, working for ESA at the moment in a consolidation study. With its partner companies or subcontractors, Kinetic Space in Belgium, in Poland, GMV and Astronica, GMV in Spain, GMV in Portugal, Spinworks from Portugal, also GMV in Romania, and also other European companies are attracted by this, seeing a chance to participate. And AIM is a typical mission to be implemented by or being supported by small and medium-sized companies supporting this, also proving new technologies, also making use of technologies for the first time, which could be used in one of the next missions, so enabling the following missions and proving that this works, so mitigating risk and cost for future missions, and also having scientific institutes on board with which are really defining the science case of this. So an innovative mission like AIM is also a starting point to enable future missions of a similar characteristic.
Wollte ich noch einmal kurz erwidern, das ist wirklich für uns auch bei Asteroid Day einfach so wichtig, wie ich das auch am Anfang schon gesagt habe. Deswegen ist eine solche Mission auch so bedeutend, deswegen ist auch die Rosetta-Mission so bedeutend.
Greg Richters confirms that also for the Asteroid Day, this mission, AIM or AIDA, is really important. It's what they have in mind to say that's the next step, which is necessary to also proving that this cooperation between industry agencies and institutes really enables this mission.
Da ist es einfach wichtig, dass wir Inspiration zeigen. Bei den Asteroiden geht es einfach auch um die Faszination und darum, die nächste Generation zu inspirieren.
And it's also about fascinating the public, interested people, but also students, future engineers or scientists, that space is an interesting place, that asteroids are interesting objects, and also it's an interesting challenge to work on the threat of asteroids. And there's a nice wording about saying we've got the chance to change the history of our solar system. So now the last speaker is Patrick Michel from the Observatoire de la Côte d'Azur, reading out a letter signed by more than 100 scientists. It's also part of the press kit, so I will not repeat the readout here.
So I'm going to read you this lecture that basically summarizes why we need to do this mission. So the recently completed Rosetta mission aimed for both its technical and engineering feats as well as scientific discovery captured the world's attention. Not only was Rosetta the first ever successful attempt to land on a comet, it also returned a powerhouse of scientific knowledge about small bodies in our solar system. ESA woke up the sleeping beauty while the world watched and cheered. Now we must go further with the launch of the European Asteroid Impact Mission, AIM, as part of the international IDA mission. We want to make sure that the heritage of Rosetta in terms of both technology and expertise continues, leading to new missions and further innovation. As citizens of our solar system, we need to expand our body of knowledge of the universe in which we live. Of the nearest objects so far discovered, there are more than 1,700 asteroids currently considered hazardous. Unlike other natural disasters, this one we know how to predict and potentially prevent with early discovery. As such, it is crucial to our knowledge and understanding of asteroids to determine whether a kinetic impactor is able to deflect the orbit of such a small body in case Earth is threatened. This is what IDA will help us assess. AIM would launch in October 2020 to travel to a binary asteroid system, the paired Didymos asteroids, which will come within 16 million kilometers of Earth in 2022. The 800-meter diameter asteroid is orbited by the 160-meter moon. This smaller body is AIM's focus. The spacecraft will perform high-resolution measurements of the moon to build detailed maps of its surface, subsurface, and interior structures, the first time this is done on such a small body. If approved, AIM would be Europe's contribution to the larger Asteroid and Impact and Deflection Assessment Mission, IDA. Around 4 months after AIM's arrival, the NASA-led part of IDA will arrive. The Double Asteroid Redirection Test DART probe will crash straight into the asteroid. Rosetta was a bold mission whose spirit we believe must be continued with IDA and its AIM mission. With AIM, we continue that audacious journey of discovery into the structure of asteroids, expanding our knowledge of the building blocks of planetary systems, and in particular our solar system. AIM is the ideal testbed for new technologies and the perfect stepping stone to our more complex deep space missions. Asteroids are marvels of planetary systems, in particular our solar system. Like comets, they are leftover matter from the formation of planets, rich in minerals and rich in scientific knowledge of the early history of our solar system. Additionally, these NEOs could provide an economic source of extraterrestrial materials for continued human exploration. Therefore, we, the undersigned signatories, strongly urge governments and policymakers to keep small bodies missions, such as the already launched Hayabusa 2 by JAXA in Japan and OSIRIS-REx by NASA in USA, both non-European, and upcoming IDA AIM high on the agenda to add to the body of knowledge begun by Rosetta.
Thank you, Patrick. Wir öffnen das jetzt an die Journalisten, wenn sie irgendwelche Fragen haben. Haben wir noch eine
So, question and answer session is just opened. Question for the link between risk mitigation and maybe interesting minerals on the asteroids, and what is the potential additional value or use. So Patrick Michel emphasizes that there are multiple goals of the AIDA mission, so it's not just asteroid deflection, so the mitigation of the risk, but it's also to understand the origin of asteroids and to improve the model how did the solar system being formed, planets being formed by asteroid impacts, to better understand these models. And the additional or further aspect is asteroid mining, which is quite a trend established recently, and there might be resources on asteroids which might be interesting for the use on Earth. Also having in mind that some resources might be limited on Earth, or that there might be resources which are not available to a sufficient extent on Earth.
For now,
Or
we don't know how to do it because we need this kind of mission like AIM, like OSIRIS-REx, EPISA-2, in order to better learn how to interact with these bodies.
and missions like Hayabusa, like OSIRIS-REx, like AIM are needed to understand how to make use of asteroids, also how to interact with them, how does the material there behave in this environment of very low gravity.
Better understand how it works, these kind of demonstrations, whether we are correct or not. And therefore, you build your knowledge so that at some point you can, let's say, manipulate these bodies for other purposes.
And it's also about manipulating those bodies, not just for deflection, but also for other purposes like mining. An additional question on this?
Ich frage mal auf Deutsch, um die anderen zu lassen. Gerade ging es ja darum, wie wichtig es ist, herauszufinden, wie sich diese Objekte auf den Einschlag verhalten. Jetzt weiß man noch gar nicht, wie porös oder massiv die sind. Wie weit lässt sich das denn auf die vielen anderen Millionen Körper anwenden? Wenn dieser beispielsweise sehr porös sein sollte, kann man annehmen, dass die
Question, without the knowledge how porous or rocky this asteroid is, how can this result of this knowledge be transferred to other asteroids? So will they be similar or will they be very unique? So answer on this is that there are predictions, there's modeling, and its missions with research in situ are really important to calibrate the mathematical models on Earth and the simulations to prove them. So having the proof of the predictions which are done on Earth in theory. So from the known asteroids, is from the pictures taken by Rosetta, one can see that there have been a lot of smaller impacts on those asteroids and that some of them have been destroyed, just being visible from the picture. So that's an additional strong hint to say we need to think about what happens if Earth is hit and how to mitigate this risk. Question about the cost for the mission. AIM being intended to be comparable cheap compared to other similar missions, for example Rosetta, and question is if somebody is willing to at least give a hint what cost for the mission are envisaged. It's always hard to predict the cost of the mission, and we know just putting putting an example, we know the distance from Earth to Sun being 150 million kilometers, and just putting €1 per kilometer, that's in the order of the mission cost. The German share would be much below, because it will be an international European cooperation, and there are other missions which are much more expensive, but this one, due to its nature of a small spacecraft, being a technology demonstration, leads to comparable low cost. But you cannot just talk about cost, but also see what is the benefit of this mission besides the pure science, but also demonstrating technologies and also attracting public interest and fascination. So, question again about the total cost. German share for the spacecraft cost might be in the order of 50 to 60 million euro. But also looking not at the pure cost of the mission and comparing it to the benefit of the mission, but also stating again that this would be an enabler for other missions which can be used for future missions, and this one will be implemented very fast, so launch in 4 years and being at asteroid in 6 years. Also, the science experts are supporting the preparation of the mission, trying to reduce the effort necessary to prepare the mission by also making use of knowledge gained by Rosetta, by imagery, so to be prepared what to expect there, but also by making technologies proven on Rosetta to be useful for AIM. Also supporting the mission by providing a camera for navigation and observation to the spacecraft from German institutes.
Ich würde noch mal kurz einen Punkt hier machen, vielleicht, ich weiß nicht, Stefan, von den Kleinkörper- oder den Asteroidenmissionen jetzt von Rosetta bis AIM, wie viele es denn in Europa geben würde, wenn es AIM quasi nicht gibt? Also das vielleicht noch mal so als
Just a question about small body missions like Rosetta. We had Rosetta just recently being finished, which was unique in worldwide. It's a unique competence in Europe, developing, building the spacecraft and also the Viererländer, but also navigating and operating this kind of spacecraft in a very low gravity environment around a small body. And it's a competence which can be continued and enforced with a mission like AIM, also having in mind the public awareness of the Rosetta mission. And AIM would be a seamless follow-on mission, making use of this Rosetta story, of the heritage, of the technologies, and it's also one reason why AIM would be much cheaper than other missions of that size, because it can be directly make use of heritage competences of Rosetta, for example. And currently there's no similar mission being envisaged for the near future, for the next 10 or 20 years. and waiting for this period would mean that a lot of knowledge of experience gets lost and wouldn't be available for a follow-on mission if this takes place 10 years later.
Der wird in 20 Jahren vergessen haben, wie das geht. Auch die Industrie hat natürlich dann Kompetenz verloren, die jetzt aufgebaut, auch teuer aufgebaut worden ist. Insofern hat eben nicht nur den Aspekt, nur da, dass es wissenschaftlich interessant ist, dass es technologisch interessant ist, dass es für uns alle mal sehr, sehr wichtig werden könnte.
So, besides the scientific return, the technology development or demonstration and the risk mitigation, besides all of this, it's also a chance to maintain the competencies gained by Rosetta. Richters also puts also point on the inspirational aspects of missions like that, what we've seen with Rosetta, that the public interest, the public awareness was really increasing, and also AIM is a potential candidate to attract this public awareness. So Patrick Michel. And on top on the scientific return, the technology demonstration, the continuation of competences, but attracting young people to this field of science, technology, space technology. Also comparing it to the Hayabusa mission of Japan, so of JAXA, which attracted a lot of interest and public awareness in Japan. And putting or emphasizing that it's really necessary to attract young people, getting their fascination for something and also for space and science.
Easy to explain, a lot of challenges, so therefore a lot of things that the young people would maybe like to participate to this mission.
Thank you. Gibt es sonst noch irgendwelche anderen Fragen?
A statement from Gisela from the Crater Museum in Germany in Nördlingen, sozusagen. Living and working in a crater and recognizing that there's the interest and the awareness, the fascination was increased by the Rosetta mission. And having young people, kids visiting the museum and seeing the result of this impact, the crater, and asking directly the question, what are we doing that this doesn't happen in the future? Also being emphasized by this Chelyabinsk impact 2013. Also not just looking at the Earth where the craters are visible, but also looking to the Moon, very visible just today, seeing the craters there.
Es gibt sehr viele unterschiedliche Sorten von Asteroiden. Einer ist
Alan Harris saying that Ada Sondat plus AIM is just one of the first of a row of missions which should be implemented in the future. Coming back to the point that a lot of methods to mitigate this risk of an asteroid impact by models, by simulations, but knowing that there's a serious uncertainty about this, which really needs a calibration by measurements in space with real objects, and hoping that there will not just be IDA but also other missions to prove this. Also enabling mankind to reduce the preparation time for a real deflection mission to a level which allows for a deflection. For this, the experience of missions like AIDA is really mandatory. So the question is how does this threat materialize? So having a collision of asteroids. So what happens if there occurs a collision in the main belt where two asteroids collide and one of them or a fragment of them changes its orbit towards Earth? How is this detected and how much time do we have to react on this? So the answer from Alan Harris is that all of these objects which are known are observed and supervised by ground-based telescopes, having a network of stations all around the Earth, being or cooperating under an UN mandate, and this network is called International Asteroid Warning Network, and this would release a warning if one of the objects is considered to have a serious probability to get very close to Earth in the next years. There's also a gremium consisting of representatives of all the nations, and they should discuss and decide what to do in this case that there's a serious threat. So it would be just a technical issue to solve this. So just by engineers and scientists, this would be quite easy, but in the end, it's a political decision if something should be done, who should do it, who will pay for it, what happens if this asteroid deflection causes other damages. So this is also a legal question, or there are legal aspects which have to be considered there. So there's also a group discussing these legal aspects within the United Nations to set up regulations how to deal this, but engineers and scientists seem to be convinced that technically we can do that. So how do we get the knowledge of the real object which might be the target for a real asteroid deflection? So answer to this is so there's this Earth-based observations investigating different classes of asteroids by size, by mass, but also by spectrographic images, getting some information about the constitution compared to others, at least from their surface. So the question again is, how many of these asteroids do we know? And we know that most of the objects larger than 1 kilometer are well known, at least their size, their orbit. But the smaller one in the size of this Didi moon, order of 140, 160 meters, are hard to discover. Which is kind of an object which created the crater in Ries in Germany, resulting in a crater of 20 kilometers diameter, plus ejecta covering an area around it of hundreds of kilometers. So this kind of an impact would really cause a big damage due to the density of population on Earth. But it's also mandatory to find ways to identify those objects early enough, also the smaller ones in this category. And this needs time for sure, but also the dedication to say now we are starting this, and this impact could happen every day. So, question, or the answer from Stefan Ulamek, how does this happen? How's the timeline? The first point is at which point of time do we detect these asteroids? The big ones, larger than 1 kilometer, being responsible for the death of the dinosaurs, those we know quite good. The very small ones like Chelyabinsk, those we will not discover completely. They are not so critical because they're just causing local damage, like Chelyabinsk was 17, 18 meters in diameter. But the ones in the size of the Didymon, 100, 200 meters, also being in the size of the Tunguska event, beginning of last century, which would cause at least regional damage to complete cities or areas. There's a lot of effort going on to discover them. Depending on their orbit, if they are outside the Earth orbits or between Earth and Sun, it's challenging to discover them. In an ideal case, we might know 20 years in advance that an asteroid might get dangerous for the Earth. Maybe with the probability of 1 to 2% for the impact. In this case, it's observed for a longer time, so the orbit gets better known, more precise. And if we're lucky, we figure out that the probability decreases seriously from 1% to something close to 0. But maybe it also leads to the conclusion that the first fear was valid, that it might happen, that it collides with Earth. If one has a couple of years of warning time, then with this kind of a kinetic impactor, the orbit of this asteroid can be modified in a way that the risk of a collision is decreased drastically. And the smaller the asteroid is, the later I can act, and the bigger it is, the earlier this impactor has to be launched. And as soon as we know that there is a risk, then the politicians will get aware of this. If it's, let's say, less than 1% within the next 20 years, it might not be the same like saying, okay, the risk is 50% within the next 8 years, so the people will get active. Looking at the scenarios promoted by Hollywood, by movies, just getting aware of a potential collision a few weeks or months before the collision, then this cannot be deflected by a kinetic impactor. So in this case, with this kinetic impactor, we are talking about having this knowledge years in advance, 5 to 10 years as a minimum. And this case being investigated and demonstrated here by IDA is aiming at an asteroid which will cause a 20 kilometers crater which might destroy complete large cities. Looking at this picture of a comet with a gaseous eruption, which might change the orbit, the orbital parameters of the comet, but that's a comet. So comets are changing their orbits, not zigzag, but small changes. But this applies to a comet. So So the prediction of a comet's orbit with a high accuracy is very hard because it changes its orbit naturally, while asteroids are really following physical laws and the Kepler ways. But it's much easier to predict their precise orbit. So getting into this detail, that especially for small bodies, the smaller bodies, the precise prediction over decades up to 100 years is not easy, because there are influences on these orbital parameters which influence the orbit, the so-called Jakowski forces, which modify the orbit. And also for this reason, it's important to visit an asteroid like Didymos, make the measurements there, to also have measure these forces, to understand its thermal properties, but also measure these effects on the orbit of these bodies, to understand this much better. And there's a lot of other unknown properties of small bodies like comets, like asteroids, but it has to be clear that the goal of the AIM mission is really demonstrating the technologies which are necessary to do also more precise measurements and more missions in the future. And looking at Chury, the comet, which was visited by Rosetta, but also Didymos, Didymoon, to be visited by AIM, those are comparable small bodies, and even they are of a very, very high mass, and we need to really understand what are the tools we need to modify the orbit of these heavy objects, maybe even heavier ones.
Und ich glaube, dann können wir auch das beenden soweit, und Sie können ja dann auch gerne noch 1:1 Fragen stellen danach.
Ich wollte noch mal kurz auf die Frage von der Dame zurückkommen. Sie hat die Stofflichkeit, wie so Asteroiden aufgebaut sind, gefragt.
So again, one statement about the constitution of asteroids like this. And this investigations of these objects allows also to assign the meteorites which were found on the Earth, like this rock we have here in hands, to the different asteroids or comets in orbit.
Genau, dann würde ich sagen, außer es gibt noch irgendwelche Fragen, die nicht im 1:1 besprochen werden können, dass noch was gibt.
So this public question and answer session will be closed now, and there's an opportunity for some one-to-one questions if needed. So I think this live stream will be closed as well. All this material, all this public stuff, the videos, the animations, all the stuff shown here on the screen is available in the web on isupportaim.com.